Hello and welcome back to another edition of Civil Discussion on GNAT-TV. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director here at GNAT-TV's News Project. It's a pleasure to be back with you today on Wednesday, November 1st, and a pleasure to have our co-host Don Keelan in here with us. Don, good to see you again.
Great to be here, and what a time it is to be here.
And our topic today is going to center around the whole notion of free speech and civil speech. It seems like there's a lot going on that has been kind of bringing that subject up on college campuses is one place, but also select board meetings and a few other locations. So we're going to try and talk a little bit about, kind of what are the boundary lines of free and fair speech. Where do we think those guardrails lie? And there's a lot of, I'm not sure if upheaval or turmoil are the right words, but we'll go with that on college campuses around current events, the things that are happening in the Middle East right now as we're talking. And it's been striking to me how vehement those discussions have been, and how far removed they are from trying to have kind of a respectful dialogue between both parties about what are some of their issues. But going back a few years, we can see again. We'll just stick with college campuses for a second, but this is a broader conversation that goes well beyond colleges. That it's been a challenging time, it seems like, for a lot of colleges to have free, fair speech, where one side is arguing a particular point of view and the other side responds in a way that is, uncivil is one word that comes to mind. I don't know, what do you think?
Well, I go back to the premise of this show and what we're trying to accomplish, and that is to bring a level of civility to a debate, regardless of the issue itself. That issues can be discussed if the parties are willing to sit down and abide by certain premises that we had established, or not just us, but when we brought in other guests who are very much more expert in the area of mediation and problem resolution, and that is you have to be civil. And you have to be respectful of the other side. You have to take possibly step out of your position into the other person's position and see where they're coming from. And above all, you have to listen. Right? And so when you apply those principles to what's going on either on the college campuses, they're not there. I'm saying today on the college campuses, it borders on rioting. So we're a long way from getting back to having a civil discussion. We're dealing with the possibility of riots, and in some places they've had them. But unfortunately, setting aside the colleges, we have it right here in our own state. I mean, actually in our own community. I was sharing with you earlier, there's a lack of civility that takes place in front of the select board in Bennington at a number of their meetings. And a recent column in the paper by Mike Bethel described that. I don't know whether you have, but I've seen several of the meetings in Burlington. The Burlington, they call themselves the city council. It's very uncivil, and it's also very threatening. And there's another part of this, and that is in many of these communities throughout Vermont, and let's just stay with Vermont for a moment, the folks that serve do it on a voluntary basis, all right? And if someone's going to come up to them at the table at a select board meeting or a planning board meeting and scream at them and threaten them, I mean, the next thing they're going to say is, do I really need this? And they're going to walk. And therefore the committee or the boards are going to be lacking members. And there's a number of boards in Vermont right now that aren't up to their required number. Why? Because people do not want to serve. They really want this. So the issue that's going on in the Middle East, because that could take.
We could spend a long time talking
we
about it.
really could. I mean, it goes back.
It's a complicated question.
Hundreds of years.
Yeah.
But let's just stay with what's going on as it pertains to what we're trying to accomplish with this show on civil discourse.
Well, I mean, clearly, free speech should never include things like threats or physical harm. You're correct. I mean, it's not just in Bennington or Burlington, but all across the country. It seems like a lot of local government folks, people, who are just trying to kind of do something good for their community and step up and serve, get threatened with, one thing or another. And who wants that? I mean, that's what you signed up for. So I think, clearly, to me, there are a couple of principles to start with. I mean, free speech should never include threats or threats of physical harm. And free speech also needs to be supported by facts. I mean, my facts and your facts might be at loggerheads with each other, but at least there should be some sort of effort to say, I think this because of this, X, Y, or Z is why I'm, instead of just sort of some, something you heard online. I hate to bash social media again, but it just seems like that's an area that it really has not been terribly helpful in pushing free, fair, and civil speech forward. I just think it just seems like that's where a lot of conspiracy theories and just theories that make no sense whatsoever seem to get born and put out there, and people buy it, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, they're jumping up and down at a select board meeting because of something that they heard.
Well, when you mention free speech, it's not just on college campuses that it needs to be addressed, but it goes beyond that. We had brought this up at a previous show. I believe it was Jonathan Karp, who's the president of Simon & Schuster, and he, I believe, had mentioned, not on this show, but on several publications, what it means to have free speech or be able to publish your views. He was mentioning how he had a number of editors, a sizable number of editors, did not want Simon & Schuster to publish a book by Mike Pence. How dare the company take on this book by I gather, a conservative politician, right?
So I assume it was before he was vice president, or?
It was after he was vice president.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, after he was vice president. They just didn't want that book to be published, right? And they didn't want Simon & Schuster to take that on. Now, these are editors, right? And thank goodness for Jonathan Karp. He would not allow that. He wanted every point of view disclosed and published. Right? Well, you may not agree with it. Well, that's fine, but it's not going to be suppressed. Now, so it goes beyond college campuses. The freedom of speech, but staying with the college campuses, and we really need to bifurcate what's going on today with college campuses prior to October 7th. And that is, many colleges would not allow a speaker to come there if, in fact, their student body didn't like the point of view of that speaker. And you were mentioning earlier, what happened, I believe it was 5 or 6 years ago, in Middlebury, where they
Charles Murray
they prevented the. Actually, he came. The professor, I believe he was from Harvard, who had written about the bell curve.
Right. Charles Murray,
and that was pretty ugly. And a professor
he was booed
trying
off
to
the
interfere,
stage
got
and
injured. And I gather they had to bring the show, or bring his program to a lecture hall rather than to the auditorium.
Yeah, well, that was certainly a low point in my opinion. Anyway, I mean, you know, you may not agree with what somebody has to say, but you know, assuming they come with a background of scholarship and some authority, it would make sense to listen to them first, and then maybe ask a few questions later, rather than just sort of hooting them off the stage. I mean, I'm not saying that may be the case for everybody. I mean, there are certain people I could imagine myself as a college student going, "You're wrong," but I think in that case that was clearly incorrect. I guess though you know, I keep on coming back to this question, whether or not is free speech absolute. I mean, Elon Musk, I think, mentioned something about this at one point recently when he was acquiring X, formerly Twitter, that he was a free speech absolutist, and basically any people should be able to post kind of pretty much whatever they want. And I guess I have a problem with that. I'm not sure that free speech is absolute. I mean, I think you need to bring, like I was saying earlier, some measure of factual data to the conversation before you can just say whatever you want and expect to kind of not be challenged by it.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think the Supreme Court has ruled on that one. You know, what's very well known as the you know, you can't shout fire in a theater. I mean, at the same time, there's been a few publicized arrests recently. I believe is it in Nevada, the senator, someone threatened the U.S. senator from Nevada wanted to threaten her with murder because she was Jewish, or because she is Jewish, and you know, you don't have that right to go out and threaten someone, whether it's just doing it on the phone, in the newspapers, anywhere, in writing, or and now we have obviously the social media. That to me is not part of free speech. So I think we can rule that out. And now, I guess your point is, who makes the decision? When does that cross over from being acceptable to being not acceptable? Who's the judge?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, who does those? I mean, is it just sort of you know, the body politic at large? Is it the U.S. Supreme Court, or you know, some court of law? Is it a legislative assembly? I don't know. Well,
let's if I can interrupt you, let's take Musk. Go back to let's he on X now. Let's assume for the moment, hypothetically, he doesn't like any of the pronouncements by Democrats coming into this next election. None whatsoever, and so he's going to shut that down on his. I call it Twitter, but and they're not going to be able to publicize their opinions on that device. That to me is putting too much power in one person's hands. But you can see where he's the judge. All right, and the question then becomes, well, this is a private device. This is not a public device. I mean, it's not owned by the public. Why can't he do that? So it's very complicated. Who actually owns the social media presentations? I'm referring to the internet.
Yeah, well, that's a question that gets debated a lot, and as we were talking before the show, there are two cases, I guess, that are being discussed before the Supreme Court right now, or earlier this week. They involved public officials, one in Michigan, I think, and one in California, that posted government-related information on their personal Facebook pages. And those drew comments from some of the local residents. And when those comments became too critical, the government officials blocked them from the Facebook pages. And both those folks then sued, and the case made its way to the Supreme Court, and where it's being discussed now. And it's kind of an interesting question, like whether or not, if you're a public official and you start talking about local town business, are you still having a personal Facebook page anymore? It would be an interesting case to see where they land on this. But I don't know. I can't recall off the top of my head what the federal legislation in, I think it was in 1996, was passed about that looked at this question. But it seems to me that if you're operating in a public sphere like Twitter or X or any of the social media companies do, it's not strictly private. It's like you can't say I own this like I own a car or a refrigerator, and I can do whatever I want with it. When you're involved in public discourse like that, I mean, I guess where I'm coming down is that free speech isn't absolute, and someone like Elon Musk, I don't want to pick on him all the time here. There's plenty of other folks that are, we could pick on if we wanted to.
But it's not the same. I mean, and you actually worked for him as the editor. The local news sources, the Manchester Journal, the Banner, and the Brattleboro Reformer. And I've been writing a column with them for the last 20 some odd years. And it's not quite a political column, but I have a different point of view than even the paper has in many respects. Now, if they said to me tomorrow, Don, we're not going to publish your column anymore, I mean, do they have a right to do that? And then shut that point of view down. And the answer to the question is they certainly do have that right. Right? And why doesn't Musk have the same right? I mean, he owns a private company. So he doesn't want Andrew McKeever's point of view to be disclosed to everyone. Right? I'm going to shut him off. And I can, because he's using my device, which I privately own, to get his point of view across. I'm going to shut him down. Now, the difference is, and I think this is where you might have a valid point. He's using the airways, and that's a public domain.
Yeah.
And that may be a difference. On the other hand, so does the TV organization, so does the radio. So, but I think we're getting a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit too far afield. I think we need to come right back to grassroots here, right here in our own community, and get back to what we mean by having civil discourse, right? Because how are we ever going to resolve the world issues? And there's a lot more than what's going on in Palestine and Gaza. There's other major issues. If we can't even have a civil discussion in Bennington over whether or not we should, the town should sell the senior center, right? Or in Burlington, whether the police force should be 70 or 90 sworn officers. If they cannot have a civil meeting and continue a meeting, right, how are we ever going to resolve these other issues? And I think we just have to keep hammering what it is that we subscribe to, and that is, if you're going to have discuss an issue, you need to listen. You need to be factual in your presentation. You need to take the other person's point of view, at least understand it. You may not agree with it, but God, this shouting and this threatening.
Yeah, well, I mean, I take some comfort from the fact that I think probably ever since the dawn of time, I would imagine, and certainly since the start of this country, There have been plenty of situations and issues and controversies that have come up and that people wound up getting pretty worked up about. And you know, you had even in the halls of Congress, people, you know, smashing each other with umbrellas or canes or whatever, you know, back in the Civil War, or before the Civil War, for a famous case about that. So there's been, you know, it's not like this is anything terribly new, I guess, but there does seem to be a level of intolerance that I guess I would like to have thought by this point we would have kind of gotten beyond a little bit, and that, like you say, we should be able to kind of take a breath and listen and process what other people are saying and decide whether or not any of it makes any sense, or maybe all of it does, whatever, and just, you know, kind of be able to stop and think. But there seems to be an emotional involvement that some people get into on some of these issues, and you could look at, you know, any of the current ones today. Immigration, climate change, you know, the list could go on for a long time. And there seems to be an inability on some people's part, and I'm going to say on both sides of all issues, to kind of, you know, like you say, listen and think before you maybe say you're wrong or whatever. I find it distressing that at this point in time, you know, somebody needs to, you know, get crazy at a city council or a select board meeting about an issue that, you know, okay, it's important, it makes sense, but let's have a rational conversation about it, because it's also self-defeating. I mean, if you're a select board member and someone jumps up out of the audience and starts, you know, shouting or waving their fist or whatever, are you going to, like, go along with their point of view? I mean, it's like, if anything, the reaction is going to be like, okay, whatever you're saying, I disagree with.
Well, and I listened to you on that because you do serve on the select board. I mean, hopefully that doesn't come before you, but
I hope not either. Hasn't yet.
But getting back to the point you were making, I raised this: have we lost the ability to communicate with the advent of the cell phone or these devices? That we don't go face to face anymore. I think you know, I've heard that described before, that, you know, that people are so involved with their electronic devices that they've lost the ability to have eye contact and have discussions with people. And is that what's taking place today? And people are getting their information via the computer, and whether or not it's really factual. So I mean, it's the lack of civility is what I see. And
yeah, and I guess I just find myself going, you know, I question just the need for it. I mean, I suppose you could have questioned the need for it 200 or 300 years ago in a similar conversation, but it just seems like it's just so pointless and self-defeating. And I can't blame cell phones or the internet or online social media completely. I think people still have a responsibility to kind of think a little bit about what they're seeing and whether or not that makes sense. But I mean, it hasn't helped. I don't think.
I don't deny the responsibility. I deny do they have the skill? That's you know, to sit in front of, you know, someone like yourself and because all they've been doing is sitting in front of a device, and do they actually communicate with someone one-on-one, eye contact, you know, and that's it. Have we lost that skill? I mean,
well, it's certainly easier to shout at somebody across a Facebook page than it is if we're sitting around a table.
Exactly, that's my point. That's my point.
You're semi-anonymous, or can be maybe completely anonymous, and
that's my point.
And
thank you.
That makes it a lot easier to say you're stupid.
I mean, go back to you brought it up a little while ago about the Civil War and even before that. I imagine you and I having a discussion and I'm from the South, and I'm saying it's 1855, give or take. We're both in Congress, and you're from Massachusetts, I'm from Virginia, and I want to have the right in my state to own slaves. Right? You, on the other hand, said we want to get rid of that. And here we go. Imagine how momentous that decision is. It had to be debated. Right? And of course, it took a war to resolve it, but unfortunately. But you can have go back another 70, 80 years to the Constitution, and what it took to get that through.
I'm sure there were a lot of shouting matches in the
I'm sure there
halls
were.
in Philadelphia.
But they were meeting, and of course, someone could throw up at us that there was a dispute that got carried away between was it Aaron Burr and Hamilton?
Right.
And where they had a duel. I mean,
somebody died.
Yeah. I don't know how much time we got, but
about 2 minutes.
But I think what's going on on the campuses is going to continue to be done with a lack of civility, which we're seeing now, and the lack of people listening to not listening to the other side. You see that everything we've tried to subscribe to here is being violated, if you will.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate to see it. I mean, I can think of instances I've heard of at places like Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Cornell, Stanford. These are prestigious schools where there were issues, like, again, pre-October 7th, pre-Hamas, Gaza, where the tolerance for other points of view was challenged, I think, in an unfortunate way. And I guess I think, to circle back, and before we need to run to the college thing, I think it's maybe worth another conversation if we can maybe have someone from a college to come and join us to talk a little bit about the dynamics on campuses. Those are the arenas where, in theory, young minds get shaped and formed, and ideas get shared, and it is a place where different ideas should be able to kind of, compete and collide with each other, and enable.
We've lost that
to form opinions. I mean, not to say any place couldn't, but that certainly is one area and one point where you would think those kinds of dialogues could, maybe more easily happen.
Can I interrupt? Do you think I could go to Middlebury College today? And somewhat hypothetical, but if I could go to Middlebury College today, or Bennington College, or UVM, and Don Keelan's going to come up there and speak on advocating that the United States reinstitute the draft, right? And everyone 18 years old has to register and sign up for 2 years, be committed, and the country's going to draft. By the way, that could possibly happen because the 3 militaries, other than the Marines, are not meeting their quotas. So set that aside. But you think they would allow me to come before their student body and give a talk?
I have no idea.
I know you don't. But given the
I'd like to think they would. And you may not get a lot of people agreeing with you.
I agree with that. But the thing is, would they allow me to present my point of view? And my gut feeling is, the way the attitude is today, I wouldn't even be allowed on campus.
Oh, maybe now we'll have to reach out to those.
We can find out, and that's why I'm anxious.
We'll take a poll.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to leave it there for today, Don. But thanks again for coming in, and always fun to debate these ideas with you and talk about them. And well, hope you folks found the show interesting as well. And we'll see you again the next time. Meanwhile, have a great day.